A Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Dream Warriors took Freddy Krueger and his Elm Street kids to the next level. You can fall wherever you like. I won't argue with you if you prefer the original. But Nightmare 3 being the best movie in the franchise is not an unpopular opinion. We knew the Springwood slasher would return, but how exactly he would rise again was anyone's guess. That was not a joke, that was not a bit, that wasn't even misleading editing on my part. If you've seen the movie, you know, Freddy comes back for a fourth film after a dog pisses fire in a junkyard. Because that's where we're going now. Today we'll be going all the way in on A Nightmare on Elm Street 4, The Dream Master. Then we'll set our sights on A Nightmare on Elm Street 5, The Dream Child. If you're a huge fan of the Nightmare series and you can't handle hard facts, fair critique, and personal opinions that do not reflect your own, I highly recommend you head out right now. Up to this point, I haven't really had a bad thing to say about A Nightmare on Elm Street at all. I'm even a 2 defender. I think Nightmare 2 is pretty damn good, even if it does stray from the others. But that all ends today, if I'm just being clear up front. Now, I do have compliments to pay out. There are cool parts that I want to put over, but I am not particularly a big fan of either one of these next 2 entries. Was the writing of Nightmare 4 labeled a complete mess by a New Line producer? Yes, it was. Was Nightmare 4 in the middle of shooting without a script before they even hired a director? Yes, it was. Does a character fight an invisible Freddy Krueger because the studio ran out of money and couldn't afford to shoot the originally scripted scene? Yes, he does. And we're just getting started on what makes Nightmare 4 a razor-fingered handful, to put it gently. And that's not even dipping into Nightmare 5 just yet. So sit tight, grab something to sip on, and maybe throw a pizza in. Just, you know, give the pizza a second look before you go taking a bite. Welcome to the history of A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 3, Dream Master and Dream Child. Every video here on 616 Entertainment is made possible by my supporters over on Patreon. If you enjoyed the show here today, consider signing up. You'll get early access, exclusive videos and podcasts and more. Pro Wrestling Tees has the merch. As always, thank you for watching. Do we have to tell the story of the film? Do we? Is it really that important at this juncture? We're kind of getting into Friday the 13th territory where it's like, Jason's going after the people on the campground again. Well, let's do it quickly. Kristen, Roland, and Joey all survived Nightmare 3, so rather than having a whole new cast of characters for Freddy to prey upon, we've got returning all-stars. Or, I mean, we've got them for a few minutes. All 3 of our heroes from Dream Warriors are killed pretty early into Nightmare 4. Yes, even Kristen. And, oh, yeah, that is Kristen, believe it or not. If you're going, no it isn't, then you're half right. It is Kristen. It's not Patricia Arquette, who opted not to return to the franchise for undisclosed reasons. Some say she didn't want to be trapped in the horror genre. Others say her star had simply gotten bigger and she was wrapped up with other projects. Her castmates have stated that it was a money issue and that she wasn't even asking for a lot of money, but it was still more than New Line were willing to pay her, and if there's anything we've learned from this series, it's that that is probably true. So no, this is not Patricia Arquette as Kristen. It's Tuesday Night. Yes, that is this woman's real name. Tuesday doesn't look anything like Patricia, which is extremely distracting, but that's the least of our worries, as this character doesn't feel anything like Kristen. At all. I personally find it funny that she says her own name to herself in the opening scene.
Become Kristen.
New Line had to have been well aware that audiences were going to be like, who the hell is this? But who cares either way. She's killed after Freddy turns into a shark. And then he puts on sunglasses and he chases her on the beach and he throws her in a fucking oven or something. Goodbye, established characters that we actually cared about. It was nice to meet you. It was good to see you again. But you gotta go, because now it's time to make room for a new group of stereotypical, worthless, pointless high schoolers. I don't feel any need to explain who these kids are, what they do, or what their goals are, because there's really nothing to them. They're just here to be wiped out by Freddy. Alice is our new lead, and her whole thing is that she inherits the abilities and, I guess, the spirits of her friends after they're killed. Some of the characters are so nothing that there is no personality or trait for Alice to inherit, so she just gets a physical object from them. Perfect. In the end, Alice fights Freddy, one-on-one, in a church, and I am being extremely generous in calling this a fight. The whole thing is extremely awkward. Like when a series of spots goes wrong in a modern pro wrestling match and nobody has the instincts to keep things moving, they just knew what they had memorized, so now it's all falling apart in front of everybody. The dialogue here is atrocious, and it has nothing to do with A Nightmare on Elm Street.
You've got their power. I've got their souls. I've been guarding my gate for a long time, bitch.
What the fuck are you talking about? Alice kills Freddy by showing him his own reflection, which completely comes out of nowhere. Freddy has looked in the mirror 100 times in this series, so... Ugh. The souls Freddy had stolen over the years burst from within, tearing him to pieces in what is undoubtedly a fantastic special effect. More on this later. But that's pretty much it. In the end, Alice and her boyfriend may or may not have abolished Freddy forever, and everyone lives happily ever after. And there you go. I wasn't going to give you 20 minutes on the super cute girl with the inhaler because there's really nothing to say. I wasn't going to waste 15 minutes of your time on why Roland... I wasn't going to waste 15 minutes of your time on why Roland's dog pees fire because it's never explained. This is never explained. Why a dog? Why dog piss? Ugh, it's just stupid. And it's a shame that the jumping off point is so worthless because the effect itself is fantastic. So let's do that for a minute. Let's talk about some of the great effects in this film. I was floored to find in my research that the figures fighting from within Freddy's chest at the end, those are real people standing inside a puppet of Freddy that was over 20 feet tall. Who the hell came up with something this crazy? Well, good old JCB, John Carl Buechler, played a big part in the effects of Nightmare 4. You may remember me burying Buechler's directorial effort in the history of Friday the 13th as I did not enjoy The New Blood at all. I think it sucks. But in that very same video, I put over his special effects work to the moon. This was the man's true strength, in my mind. The pizza with the people in it is not something I ever would have given the green light to. I think it's really stupid. But I guess it does look cool. And there you go. I did have some positive things to say. I never set out to make one of these videos going, oh, I can't wait to be miserable the whole time. And that is the way that it goes sometimes, but that's never my point. That's never what I set out to do. So I did say some positive things. I hope you had fun with it because now it's time to get back to the negative. Director Renny Harlin stated that he saw Freddy Krueger as the hero. He wanted Freddy to feel like James Bond. I can't say I ever would have picked that up if he didn't say anything about it. Freddy doing increasingly stupid things and looking dumber and dumber doesn't exactly give me a 007 feel, but hey, what do I know? The baby faces in the movie are pointless, but that doesn't make the heel cool by default. That's not how that works. To quote the great Mark Borchardt, I personally find this image of Freddy Krueger to be a theatrical mockery, man. I mentioned Renny Harlin as our director here, and it's worth reiterating something I said at the top. Yeah, New Line were already shooting Nightmare 4 before a director was ever hired. Not only was there no director, the script, which was written by 4 different people, was being largely ignored on set in favor of making up dialogue on the spot. You might notice watching the movie that a good deal of what our characters are saying happens without their face in the shot, which allowed for a ton of re-recording to be done in order to get from point A to point B slightly smoother. The sound mixing is garbage. You've got to love a character sprinting down a hallway, and the only sound we can hear is the jingling of keys. Who needs footsteps rumbling through a cavernous corridor? Who needs... Never mind. Clearly I'm putting more thought into it than they did, so what's the point? Watch Alice's mouth at the very end.
It won't come true. It won't come true. It won't come true.
I don't know how many of you can read lips, but "it won't come true" is not what Lisa Wilcox said there. Many of the nightmare scenes feel like departures from the franchise's usual tone because Renny Harlin was making them up the day he shot them. I must say though, the scene where a ton of hot girls run into the stall while this guy's taking a shit, that is so good because that is a fucking nightmare. They don't always have to be scary. Sometimes they can just be so embarrassing that they make you want to kill yourself. We all know that feeling, right? Renny Harlin said that he never felt New Line CEO Robert Shea wanted to hire him at all. He said he felt the entire time that Robert Shea was under the impression that he was about to ruin the entire franchise. Robert Shea can be quoted as saying, "Renny came in and he pitched me some really awful, corny ideas." So why did New Line hire this guy? Well, they needed somebody. Another quote from Robert Shea is, "Well, at least we'd be able to finish this somehow." I learned in my research that Tom McLaughlin, the director of Friday the 13th Part 6, one of the consensus favorites in that franchise, had inquired about directing a nightmare film. They offered him this one in the middle of production. When McLaughlin found out that this is how New Line did things, he promptly woke up from his dream of directing a Nightmare on Elm Street movie. I mentioned that 4 different writers were tasked with putting a script together for this film at different points, sometimes all at the same time, but I do think it's worth noting that this film was shot during a writer's strike. And yes, they quietly continued to work on the script during the strike, completely undercutting the entire point of the strike. Shitheads. I particularly enjoyed hearing director Renny Harlin detail that a lot of times we had no idea what we were going to shoot. We knew we had a scene where Alice was scared, she was in the house, and then it's the next day. So we know we need Alice and the house, and we go from there. This whole thing might give you Haddonfield flashbacks to Halloween 5: The Revenge of Michael Myers, where director Dominique Othenin-Girard clearly had no fucking idea what he was doing. Now this situation is different because there was a writer's strike going on and New Line wanted a movie in theaters that Halloween season. Dominique Othenin-Girard did not have that type of excuse to fall back on. He was just a talentless hack tiptoeing through production, hoping nobody would realize that he had no idea what he was doing. I don't like A Nightmare on Elm Street 4, I actually really dislike it, but it's not as bad as Halloween 5. And to be honest with you, I'm sorry that I even mentioned them in the same sentence. I've lauded the special effects several times already, but they're not all great. The spot where Freddy is the nurse is uncomfortable. I love it. The blood showing through the uniform makes it seem like there's this great transformation coming. And then he's just here. What happened? What a disappointment. I'd like to know why there's no damage on Roland in real life after he's stabbed. Same thing with Joey. From Nightmare 1, it's been a thing where if Freddy cuts you in a dream, you're going to be wounded in real life. What happened to that? I should mention how funny it is that Joey's near downfall in Nightmare 3 was a hot, naked blonde, and his ultimate death here in Nightmare 4 comes at the hands of, what? A hot, naked, wet blonde. The guy's got his priorities. I respect it. The orange light in the waterbed feels cheap in comparison to the crimson geyser bed of the original, though. I couldn't help but laugh at how over-exaggerated the blood of the cockroach was at the beginning. This thing is coated in Vaseline. It looks ridiculous. It's like when one drop of Peter's blood in Spider-Man splashes on the ground like a can of tomato juice tipped over. Look at the scene later where Freddy turns the girl into a cockroach, which is an incredible set of effects in its own right. But when he squishes the bug girl inside the trap, the amount of goo that shoots out is so funny. How many of you were damaged by the scene where her elbows split while she's lifting weights? I couldn't have been the only one, right? And it doesn't have to make sense. Her arms were literally just at this angle. There's nothing painful about this angle, but it was enough to get under my skin, and it was enough to still be my main takeaway from A Nightmare on Elm Street 4 all these years later. You know what else gets under my skin? The fact that Wes Craven approached New Line with a pitch for Nightmare 4. A pitch that they outright rejected, labeling it nonsensical. It apparently centered around time travel inside of dreams. I've only seen that done once, and that was nonsensical garbage, to be fair, but this was Wes Craven. This was his creation. And wait, his pitch was nonsensical? As opposed to flaming dog piss resurrecting Freddy Krueger? As opposed to Kristen's mom secretly feeding her sleeping pills as if she's completely unaware of the danger? As opposed to Freddy completing his mission to take out all of the Elm Street kids and then just targeting other kids for the sake of further sequelization? As opposed to completely foregoing the spooky, scary, threatening nightmare vibe in favor of packing in as many popular radio rock songs as possible. Please. Dream Master plays to me like cheap fan fiction from the very start.
Oh shit, Kristen, not again.
He's coming back for us.
You're putting one serious dent in my beauty sleep.
And over the course of the film, there's not much in place that works to counteract that feeling. If there is one more compliment I will pay to this film, it's the part where Alice and her boyfriend rush to the truck to race over and help their friend. We see the friend contending with Freddy's trickery, and right when you would expect the heroes to arrive, they're once again approaching the truck, ready to race over and help their friend. This time loop spot is Robert Englund's personal favorite bit across the entire franchise, and that is saying something. The first time I saw Nightmare 4, I couldn't believe it. Even as a teenager, I bought nothing about this movie. I found it boring, I found it annoying, I found it stupid, I found it insulting, but more than anything else, I found it surprising that New Line somehow dropped the ball this badly, this quickly after Nightmare 3. The answer is obvious, so I don't know why I'm acting like I don't know. It's money. Robert Shea and New Line Cinema really enjoyed the idea of spending very, very little and making as much as possible. Remember, they didn't even initially invite Robert Englund back to play Freddy for Nightmare 2. They figured even back then that they had something special enough that people would just buy tickets, whether or not they recognized anybody on the cast, whether or not it was any good. Who cares? Just put something on the screen called A Nightmare on Elm Street. That was literally the most important piece of the puzzle to them. Quality, vision, passion, that was all either way in the background or completely disregarded. With no completed script, no director for most of the shoot, and no real plan as to what the hell the series would become, A Nightmare on Elm Street 4, The Dream Master, was finished, and it did hit the big screen. And what happened? Well, it drew the most money any fucking Nightmare movie ever had. And do you know what that means? It means that, at this time, Robert Shea was right. Who gives a shit? Now, I would like to clarify something really quick. I mentioned in part 1 of this series that Nightmare 1 outdrew both Halloween 4 and Friday the 13th Part 4 at the box office. This was a total brain fart botch job. Halloween 4 released in 1988, not 1984. And I know that, too. I just fucked up. This movie, Nightmare 4, released in 1988, alongside Halloween 4 and Friday Part 7. And yes, even in this updated and corrected format, Freddy still kicked Michael and Jason's asses. I just wanted to clear that up, because I knew I fucked that up the first time. I'm sorry. Thank you to everybody who pointed it out. New Line Cinema's approach to who cares, just put something on the screen and they will buy tickets. That approach actually worked out pretty well here with Nightmare 4. This was the highest grossing film in the series up to this point, and I guess in some sense you can't argue with those numbers. The question from here became, how many times can you get away with making a bad movie before audiences stop buying tickets? Let me just say one thing before we really get going here on Nightmare 5. I have hated this movie for a long time. Just really didn't enjoy it. I thought it was stupid. I thought it was a mess. I had these harsh feelings for years. When I put together videos like this, I rewatch, research, and then I write. And upon rewatching, I discovered something. I actually don't hate this movie anymore. At all. I was really, really surprised to learn this. Look, I came into the history of A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 3 going, oh my god, I gotta watch 4 and 5 back to back. And while I still do dislike 4 quite a bit, I gotta tell you, 5 really landed for me this time. You know what it is? A lot of it is the effects. I'll go into more detail later, but just really quickly, the motorcycle death where Dan becomes one with the bike, are you insane? Before that, in the truck where Freddy pours acid on himself, he rips his own arm off and uses it as a seatbelt to buckle himself in? Forget about it. At the end, yeah, sorry, I told you we'll go into more detail later. When the soul gimmicks are escaping out of Freddy's back, please. The effects here are so good. Man, I'm such a sucker for practical effects. With Nightmare 5 dropping in 1989, we were at the ass end of the foam and rubber days. The over-reliance on computer-generated effects was right around the corner, and things haven't been the same since. And it's not just the special effects, but the sets, the sights, the sounds, and more than anything, the bizarre. Nightmare 5 is fucking bizarre. We're in Hellraiser territory here with how off the wall and odd a lot of this shit is. And I'm all about it. Yeah, put an MC Escher stair puzzle in there. Why not? Give me a bunch of stop motion. Sure. What, did Captain McKay work on this thing? The little kid representing Alice's unborn child realizing that the souls Freddy has loaded him with technically give him an equivalent amount of power to Freddy and turning his own bullshit against him while becoming him and outsmarting him? Do you see what I mean? This movie is completely out of control, and I have seemingly reached the age where I really appreciate that. Whereas before, I guess I was still tied to expecting the same feel of Nightmare 1 and 3 all the way into 5. 5 doesn't feel like those at all, and I guess that's alright. What I'm about to say doesn't really play into the whole bizarre look and feel of this film, but it is absolutely something that we should explore, and that is that this movie began production without a script. Remember how I told you Nightmare 4 started production without a director? Yeah, well, Nightmare 5 had a director, it just didn't have a script. To be 100% clear, part of the problem is that Robert Shea & Co. at New Line hired, once again, like 4 different people to write this movie. They turned down David J. Sho's script, which revolved around the idea that there was a dimension called the Coma Pit that Freddy himself was scared to death of, and they reportedly turned this down because Sho didn't have any feature films under his belt yet. Wow, great reasoning. Look, we're already going long. There are like 3 guys with story credits on this movie, and that's largely because the lack of an official script led to a ton of pulling ideas from different scripts, shooting them, and just hoping that they would make sense later. The fact is that New Line didn't just say, hey, A Nightmare on Elm Street 5, The Dream Child, coming soon. They gave a release date before it had a script. That's not how you're supposed to do things. Joe Seeley, who plays comic book artist Mark Gray, told the Never Sleep Again documentary in 2010 that he stopped memorizing his lines on Nightmare 5 because he knew that they would just be changed by the time he woke up in the morning. It wasn't even worth it. There are moments where key dialogue is delivered off-screen, and it's done like that because those lines were recorded later as a way to stitch 2 completely unrelated segments together.
We have to find where she died to release her soul.
Now, was that an uncommon practice? Not particularly, and not to date this video, but look, Avengers Doomsday is shooting right now, and they don't have a completed script. That's 100% true, by the way. You can look it up. And think about how much money they're spending on that thing. But let's not go any further into the production without telling the story of the film. This is not like Nightmare 4, where there's not really anything of substance happening, so we can kind of fly through it. There's a lot happening in Nightmare 5. There's a lot, and not all of it makes sense. As a matter of fact, most of it doesn't. So buckle up, let's do our best. The short version is this. Alice and Dan, who did indeed live happily ever after, are having a baby. And I may have jumped the gun on the whole happily ever after thing, as Dan is not exactly going to get that storybook ending. I mean, unless you count being fused into your motorcycle as a storybook ending, but I think that's more of a nightmare than a fairy tale. And hey, nightmare, how appropriate. The artist formerly known as Mike Charles brought to my attention how similar the look of the motorcycle man is to that of Tetsuo the Iron Man. And I think he's dead on. Both movies released in 1989, which makes this an even more interesting coincidence. The whole thing with this baby is completely insane, and our premise is this. Freddy is feeding souls to Alice's unborn child in order to create a new Dream Master or something. Even though Nightmare 4 was called Dream Master and this one is Dream Child, I feel like this Dream Child would have to be crowned as the new Dream Master, right? I don't know. Also, Alice is having dreams of herself in the shoes of and living the life of Amanda Kruger. Remember the whole bastard son of 100 maniacs thing? Well, we kind of see that happen here. This stuff is really cool. I appreciate that Nightmare 5 is expanding on established lore. I feel like it's been a minute since anybody's done that. In another vision, Amanda/Alice gives birth to what appears to be a demented, deformed, demonic baby Freddy. And this baby crawls into the clothing that Freddy left behind after he died in Nightmare 4, which brings him back to life, but only in the dream realm. Now Alice is caught between Amanda Kruger versus Freddy Krueger in the nightmare world, and the dialogue between mother and son needs to be heard to be believed.
Your birth was a curse on the whole of humanity. I will not allow it to happen again.
We'll see, bitch.
I must be released from my earthly prison.
This sounds like a fantasy movie or something. What the hell is happening here? But yeah, Freddy gets Dan, so Alice's baby ain't gonna have no daddy. Whoops! Why is the truck driver dressed like Freddy? Why did they do this? Alice goes on to have even more visions of a little boy named Jacob, though we go on to learn that this boy is no real boy. He's a gimmick boy, a working boy. He's a Dreamland boy. Fast forward to the end, because we'll cover the side characters and their deaths when we're talking about the special effects and kills. This final battle is unlike anything we've ever seen in A Nightmare on Elm Street up to this point. Staircases coming from and leading to nowhere, Upside down, right side up, twisting, turning. Freddy emerges from inside of Alice in a way that is practically impossible to explain. Even little Jacob finds it gross. I fucking love the scene where Freddy is once again torn apart, and the way his arm is no longer attached to his body, and you can tell the severed meat is weighing down the fabric of the sleeve. Goodness gracious. Do you see what I mean? The visuals of Nightmare 5 alone save it from the dumpster. Jacob, coached by Amanda Kruger, winds up turning on Freddy. All the power from all of the souls Freddy implanted in him, it's all used to vaporize adult Freddy, leaving only baby Freddy in his wake. Child Jacob is likewise vaporized, leaving only a regular baby where he stood. Alice takes baby Jacob into her womb as Amanda takes baby Freddy into hers, and what the fuck is happening in this movie? I kind of love it. The dream realm collapses, and Alice, along with her baby, her dad, and her best friend, enjoy a day in the park. And yes, that's the little girl that sings Freddy's song, because they couldn't just leave it alone. Ever. Had to have it open for another sequel. If you feel like I did not do a great job explaining what the hell this movie is, hey man, you are more than welcome to give it a try yourself. And to be totally clear, I'm not even complaining. Like I mentioned at the top, I really appreciate how bizarre Nightmare 5 is. I truly do. I was absolutely shocked to rediscover how much more imaginative, how much more crazy, how much more fun 5 is than 4. I always admit when I'm wrong, like I did earlier with the Halloween 4 release date. I totally fucked that up, so I wanted to set the record straight. I cannot say that I was wrong in not liking Nightmare 5, but I can say that I have come around on it. I have changed my opinion on this one, completely. Now, is it great? Absolutely not. It's extremely confusing, it's borderline incoherent, it's totally nonsensical, but it's also extremely entertaining. And when we're at the 5th entry in a franchise, that counts for a lot. Now let's talk about the characters I skipped over earlier. Mark Gray dreams of being a comic book artist someday, and he's in love with Greta, a would-be supermodel who, I mean, she's probably got a career ahead of her. Holy shit. Yvonne is one of Alice's best friends. She volunteers at a hospital, and that's how Alice is able to get in at the drop of a hat. Yvonne, as we saw earlier, was lucky enough to make it through to the end, though shit with her does get a little hairy there for a minute. Greta is not so lucky. Her death is manifested through her poor relationship with her mother and her unhealthy relationship with food and body image issues. We got stop motion animation here. We've got these amazing prosthetics on actress Erica Anderson's face. Hell yeah. Mark, distraught over losing Greta, unfortunately finds himself sucked into one of his own comics. He finds the courage to become the Phantom Prowler, and he battles Freddy. He actually trashes him pretty easily, until the Springwood Slasher transforms into Super Freddy. And that's that on that. See you later, Mark. Interesting note, Super Freddy is not played by Robert Englund in a muscle suit. This is Michael Bailey Smith, who you may have seen in a shitload of other things. So we know the writing situation was a complete mess, but we haven't really touched on the director yet. Let's do that now, and we'll hit on a few more production notes as we go. Once again, a brand new man took the chair. This time we had Stephen Hopkins, who had previously helmed Dangerous Game. And after Nightmare 5, he would direct Predator 2. Dude, Predator 2 rules. It's weird, it's different, but it rules. Hopkins, without a script to serve as the baseline for, what the hell this movie was going to be, gave himself full freedom to do whatever he wanted at every turn. The original concept for Mark's death wasn't to be sucked into a comic book. It was for an artist's every creation to come to life. Mannequins, paintings, sculptures, you name it. But Hopkins changed it to a comic book and a superhero because, and I quote, "I like superheroes." And this is where I have to bring up New Line founder Robert Shea again, who feels as though they did not follow through on the promise to always deliver a good movie. Dude, fuck you, the promise you made to fans. You made one promise with this franchise, and it was to pull every single penny out of it that you possibly could. You're putting films into production without scripts, without directors. You're lowballing the series creator, returning actors, you're recasting leads. Please. One of the producers on Dreamchild said that they routinely had to shush the construction guys next door while they were shooting because they were making a big ruckus building the next set that they were going to shoot on. You should not be doing those two things at the same time. I'm not particularly thrilled with how Freddy looks here in Dreamchild. The deep, gnarly burns on his flesh have kind of morphed into, I don't know, it just looks cheap. And in listening to the effects people talk about their work in the special features on the Blu-ray set, they were all well aware that this was far from Freddy's best appearance. It doesn't hold a candle to Nightmare 6 though, where he looks like a baby with bubblegum on his face. It's just awful. But that's a conversation for next time. It was Doug Beswick who handled the stop-motion animation here, as he did on Nightmare 3 with the puppet Freddy. And he also did the stop-motion animation for Drop Dead Fred, a movie which absolutely breaks my heart to pieces. Watch at your own peril. One thing we haven't really had to talk about yet in this series is the MPAA, the Motion Picture Association of America, and how they like to pull out violence and questionable content to keep audiences safe. In Greta's death scene, Freddy was originally going to cut her stomach open and start feeding her to herself. Dan on the motorcycle, there was so much more to this, with wires and cables piercing his skin and intertwining with his skeletal structure. No can do, said the MPAA, and a ton of the good stuff was left on the cutting room floor. For all the compliments I'm paying to Nightmare 5 for its creative and imaginative visuals, there's a pretty good chance that I actually enjoy these things more than the people who worked on the film. Like I said earlier, I watched a lot of interviews and special features on the Nightmare Blu-ray set, and there is a ton of talk about how this film really isn't that scary at all. Erica Anderson, who played Greta, straight up said that she wished the movie turned out scarier than it actually is. There was a line from somebody else whose name I can't remember right now, but I'm already shooting, so what are you gonna do? They said that the shiny visuals were there to distract you from the fact that all of the soul had been sucked out of the franchise. Do you feel that way about this movie? I can't say that I'm quite there. Now, this doesn't really hold a candle to 1 or 3, but it's not as bad as 4. You tell me, where do you fall on Nightmare 5? Director Stephen Hopkins talked a big game. He dropped a quote like, Freddy had joined the pantheon of the Eternals. I wanted to know where he was. She has to dive into her dream pool to find him. That sounds deep, right? It sounds like this well-thought and impactful premise. But he can also be quoted saying, we had no ending to this movie. I stuck that ending in because I'm an action fan. These two lines are so diametrically opposed to each other that I can't help but laugh about it. Hopkins also talked about the effort on Dreamchild to keep Freddy from falling too far into the cartoon world, the acceptable mainstream, you know? And if we look at things, you'll see what I'm talking about. Freddy was doing rap songs. Seriously, he wasn't just in the music videos, he actually raps on the track. Freddy Krueger merchandise of all shapes and sizes was all over the place. Now, was this good for business? When it comes to the bottom line, absolutely it was. We've been looking at the box office results throughout this series of videos, and what we've seen so far is massive returns on small budgets. We've seen Freddy Krueger defeating Jason Voorhees and Michael Myers, amongst others. Freddy Krueger was money, and at that same time, he was definitely in danger of losing that last shred of horror attached to him. Look at the TV show, for fuck's sake. Yeah, why not? Let's talk about Freddy's Nightmares. I promised we would when I revealed this History of series. Freddy's Nightmares barely has anything to do with A Nightmare on Elm Street. Freddy's Nightmares is a Nightmare on Elm Street show the same way The Mummy Returns and stars The Rock. Rock is in the opening minute. He disappears for the entire runtime, and then he shows up as a CGI monster in the final minute. That's also Freddy's Nightmares. Robert Englund is like the host of the show. He'll bookend the episodes, and that's about it. You're not gonna get a weekly Springwood slasher adventure, that's for certain. The pilot episode was all about Freddy's background and backstory. Robert Englund says that this is what the show was supposed to be, it just wasn't. It wasn't as violent or as dark as it was initially sold. It was in fact quite stupid, quite cheap, quite uninteresting. Robert Shea. We always love hearing from Robert Shea. He says that he found the series miserable. That's a direct quote. And before the 10th episode aired, he had already stopped paying attention. That's great. You'll love to hear that. He also says he blames the reception to the series on the production quality and that they weren't allowed to do everything they were promised, which, if you're thinking at this point, man, this guy really doesn't take responsibility for literally anything, does he? You might be onto something. If you ever decide to check this show out, your eyes will widen a time or two. You'll see Brad Pitt on there. You'll catch Friday the 13th Part 7's Lar Park Lincoln. Friday the 13th Part 6's director, Tom McLaughlin, directed one of these. Kyle Chandler, who's about to be a Green Lantern. Mariska Hargitay, who's been on SVU forever. Blah, blah, blah. It's a piece of the Freddy legacy, obviously. But at the end of the day, it was another cash grab. Another product to slap the face and logo on. Another set of tapes to sell at the store. With A Nightmare on Elm Street 5, I have to say, I think you can tell that they were trying to make him creepy again. Yes, Super Freddy is insultingly stupid. You can forget the figurative. That kill is literally cartoon. It was a choice, to be sure. But with the bizarre baby storyline, the unexplainable war between Freddy and his mom, leaning back on the bastard son lore from the past, they took chances. Sometimes the chances can be credited to not having a script, but, whatever. They took chances. Dreamchild was anything but a basic cash grab. And for that, I give it credit. So how did Nightmare 5 do in theaters? Well, it was the worst performing, lowest drawing film in the entire franchise up to this point. Was it too late? Had the music videos and merchandise, the TV show and the video game, which I will cover on Scream Sequence this year, how you don't, had they all watered Freddy Krueger down to a fatal degree? If Nightmare 5 was any indicator, oh boy, New Line might have a very real problem on their hands here. Dream Master and Dreamchild were also released less than a year apart, which, how can anybody miss you if you never disappear, right? So, would A Nightmare on Elm Street disappear? Would Freddy remain locked away in his mother's tummy in the abyss of... No, he wouldn't. And another movie would be in theaters in less than 2 years. How would that one do? Well, that's a conversation for next time. Oh, there it is, Dan Dans. Another installment in the history of A Nightmare on Elm Street. Now, I mentioned it earlier, and I will hit it again right now. Scream Sequence, my horror retrospective series, is indeed running all through October. All through October, horror takes over the entire channel. This year, it's all about video games. From Castlevania 4 to Castlevania Bloodlines into the Saw video game. You ever play that one? I'm spreading things out. And yeah, you heard it here first. I will indeed be covering the 1989 A Nightmare on Elm Street video game exclusive to the Nintendo Entertainment System. This is either going to be a dream or a nightmare. Either way, you don't want to miss it. Patreon.com/616entertainment is where you can go to support me, support the channel, support my work, and to get the uncensored and unfiltered versions of these videos. The blood and the boobs and stuff that I can't show here, I can show it over on Patreon. And hey, the Patreon versions actually look like the movies themselves. You know, the double cropping, the mirroring, the CRT effect. I have to do that to try and get around all the copyright bullshit here on YouTube. But again, Patreon, I don't have to do that. Is it extremely annoying making two versions of the exact same video? Of course it is. Do I really appreciate those of you who are in my corner and deem it worth it to sign up to get those versions? And the exclusive Q&A podcast and GM Showdown 3 and all that good stuff? Yes, I do. Until next time, thank you for watching, and I will see you soon.